So in goal planning, what we have done is our objective is to, let's say, um, allow you to create goals in a very efficient manner. Let's say if you are with a client and you want to just show him how much he has to invest in a very quick way, instead of filling the whole form, a long detailed form, what we've done is we are just asking you a couple of details, and the system automatically suggests you the right requirements at the right time, so that you can easily either through mobile or through web just show it to the client right away. For example, if I want to just, let's say, buy a house 5 years later at a cost of, let's say, 5 CR, so I just have to write the goal name and we change the values, and once I save, the system automatically gives me in one click, gives me the requirement or how much I require on a monthly basis or an annual on or a one-time lump sum basis. The asset allocation, as well as the rates are automatically dynamically taken based on what's your default setting that you have done in the system. So coming to how to set the default settings, just to quickly go back, what you have to do is go back to advisor side in the settings section. So in the settings, you have the plan section. So in the plan, there are a couple of tabs. I'll explain each of the tab in detail. So firstly, I'll just quickly go to gallery. So many a times what happens is you guys may have uh, your own branded goal related images, let's say house goal with your own company's logo. What you can do is you can just simply click on edit image and you can upload your own house related images from your system. So those kind of things you can always do and personalize it based on your branding. So this part is there on the first part. Then comes to asset allocation. In the asset allocation, what we are essentially doing is, let's say if you have done a risk profiling of the client, so let's say you categorize one client as aggressive versus one client as conservative. So based on that and the tenure of the goal, let's say if the goal is 10 years away from now, the system automatically sees what is the risk profile of the client and how far the goal is. Based on that, it will assign the right asset allocation for that particular goal. So this is the default setting. Again, uh, even if I'm emphasizing that this is default, you can always, for a particular goal or particular section, you can always change it individually as well. Okay. So next comes is returns and inflation. In the return inflation, we have categorized this into two parts: short term and long term. By short term is anything less than 5 years, and long term is anything more than 5 years. So any rates that are taken on the short term side will be taken as 7%, and on long term it will be taken as 6. So you can accordingly adjust rates, because many times what happens is, since let's say right now, what people do is on the lower front they keep higher inflation, but in a long term basis, since the rates would be relatively smaller, so they keep in such a way. Similarly, you can set the insurance growth rates also directly from here, and for cash flow purposes, you can also add the premium inflation. Say my health insurance premium every year will grow by 5%. So those kind of things you can do it from here. Similarly, expenses also, if you are maintaining the cash flow, if you want to, let's say grocery cost every year will go up by 7%, you can always modify it here. So modification can be done directly by, let's say, double tapping on this, or you can choose to click on the edit mode here. Both points are possible. So the next is key parameters. I think these couple of things I already explained. So insurance planning growth rate. So asset growth rate, this is be taken again. It is used to calculate the rate of return. Uh, Whereas the saving status, breakup versus non-break, breakup versus total, this we use to effectively, when I go back to the client side, I'll show how this breakup versus non-breakup works. And saving type, this is a new feature we had recently launched, where you can, for goals like, let's say, vacation or education, you have the option to either plan for all next 15-20 years, or you can just plan for the next year. So what I mean by that is, certain times in a vacation kind of a setting, where you have a goal, like let's say I want to go on a vacation once every year and I need 1 lakh for it. So if you do group all years together, now the requirement would look like you have to plan for 20 years together at one time. So the requirement would come slightly higher. Whereas in a practical sense, when I'm talking about a goal like vacation, where you're going every year for next 10, 20 years, let's say for that, you want to go, you have an expenditure of, let's say, 1.2 lakhs a year. So a very basic calculation that 10,000 a month is what I need. So if you do it, say for individual, the system will only focus on what's your achievement for the next 1 year. It won't focus on the next 20 years for that matter. Okay. Then templates is something that you can add. This is basically used in uh, when generating financial plans, where you have the option to add your own templates, which can be attached and appended at the end or the beginning of the PDF. You can also add your own templates. You have to just go enter your name. Let's say the template. You have to select which category you want to put it in, and you have to just upload the right image. And basically, this will also be available in your gallery while you create a financial plan. So yeah, coming back to goals now. So once you have added the settings and you start creating goals, the system based on now since this goal is 20 in 2029 and based on the risk profile of the client, system will automatically take the asset allocation as per the settings that we just saw. The returns and inflations will also be accordingly applied. That since this is a short-term goal, the rates are applied accordingly. Um, and other parameters also by default set. So just looking at how to modify certain parameters in a particular goal, you just have to click on edit goal, and in edit goal you have the each option. I'll just quickly explain all the options. So saving start date and savings end date are basic versus a goal start date and goal end date. Now since this is a 1 year goal, it doesn't have goal end date, but let's say a goal like retirement, vacation, education will have a goal end date field where it's a recurring goal, right? So every year you want 1 lakh, for example. So till when do you want those 1 lakh for the next 5 years? So that is basically what goal start date and goal end date. So when my goal will start and when my goal will end. Whereas saving started and saving ended basically implies that uh, अगर मेरा goal 2029 में है, so till when do I want to save? So what happens in certain cases like retirement, for example, many times I will plan retirement goal from 60, but for certain cases I will say that I don't want, I may stop working directly from 55. So there is a 5 year gap when I don't want to save. Or maybe in certain cases it could happen that for a house goal, although I want to buy in 2029, I cannot save right now because certain EMIs are going on. So I'll start saving in 2026. So those kind of things. So now you have a 3 year saving period. So the requirements will accordingly increase, right? So those kind of things you can do it from here. Similarly, so breakup and no breakup. This is what I showed you outside also, but just to show what happens is when I say no breakup, the system will, for your client's reporting format, the system will merge the equity and debt and show you a total requirement that the client has to invest 97,000 monthly. So this is only for, let's say, those clients where they may not understand the markets completely and would not understand the difference between debt and equity, and you want to keep it simple for the client's understanding. So that's why you can use such a feature where you just remove the breakup part and you just show him the total amount that he has to invest based on your recommendations. Okay. So next is the freeze calculation. Now freeze calculations basically works in such an environment where, let's say, for example, uh, usually how it happens is once you allocate certain assets to this particular goal, the requirement changes and it most likely reduces, right? So let's say if I allocate a SIP of 50,000, the new requirement should nearly come to 47,000. uh, so what happens is, let's say tomorrow onwards, if I keep observing this goal for a certain amount of time, the requirement is bound to change because the MF value, we have mentioned that it will grow in the goals calculation. We have mentioned that it has to grow at 12%, but it may so happen that the market has fallen down or it has gone up. So in such a case, the requirements end up either drastically reducing or drastically increasing. So many times advisors like to keep it stable. So suddenly, let's say you had met the goal, and suddenly tomorrow you are coming and seeing, and there's a requirement of 1,000 rupees. So the client may ask that yesterday only we met the goal, and today it's showing another requirement. So just to remove any sort of fear from the client, you can simply freeze the goal. Let's say if you freeze for, let's say, next 6 months, and 6 months later maybe you can review and see how the goal is performing. So it helps you just lock everything in place and just see how, and not let the client worry about how the things are changing on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Next, if you want to change the name of the goal, you are free to choose that. I mean, do that. On the priority front, so we have now recently added the priority feature where you can basically add priorities to goal. Prioritization will help you see a label to it and basically prioritize the goals accordingly. There's also detailed notes section where you can add. I'll just give you a couple of use cases that we have seen. So many advisors do add a lot of tables, and sometimes even screenshots and everything, uh, just to show a nice detailed rational report to the client. Uh, Certain things, maybe even calculations that they are not able to portray directly to the system since we are not showing each and every step. Many advisors do choose to show those calculations as well to their client just to keep everything upfront to the client. So this is completely to your choice. You can use it as per your own convenience. Um, Asset allocation, I think we already discussed. Coming to returns, returns again, the system automatically fetches the data directly based on short-term or long-term basis. Although you are free to change in this particular, if I want to, let's say instead of 7, I can even choose a 15% inflation rate, and the system will automatically increase the 69 lakhs to 99 lakhs, and the requirement will also accordingly shoot up. So those kind of features you have on your disposal. There are also other calculators. Calculators like, let's say one is a loan. So loan calculator basically, and there's a cost of delay calculator. Just to show the cost of delay calculator first. So what the cost of delay calculator tries to signify is what will happen if you don't start investing today. So let's say today the client has an investment requirement of 1,38,000. But if he doesn't start investing today, 1 year later, the requirement is obvious that it will go slightly up. So it's basically the concept of explaining it to the client that why he should start an SIP today and not wait for 1 or 2 years, because many a times client will end up saying, uh, घर खरीदने को अभी 5 साल बचे, आज से क्यों सोचना है. So in those kind of scenarios you can show it to the client कि देखो अभी अगर मैं ऐसा रख रहा हूँ, so look at how the requirements are changing. So आज मुझे 1,38,000 का SIP करना है, 1 साल बाद 176, अगर मैं 2 साल बाद प्लानिंग शुरू करूंगा 245. So it is exponentially growing in terms of how much will I have to invest just to meet that same goal that I had to start planning from today. So jitna long term goal, the effect will be much more significantly visible for you to explain it to the clients as well. Okay. Coming to the other calculator, the loan part. So let's say मेरा 1 करोड़ goal है. So in most of the cases, since we know in an investment like a house, majority of the chunk sometimes comes through a loan. So let's say अगर मैं, if I assume, let's say 1 CR is through a loan, I mean sorry, in a house of 1 CR, if let's say 80 lakhs is through a loan and 20 lakhs is a down payment, you can firstly even check if the person will get an loan worth of 80 lakhs, and then if he does, how will the requirements change. So for example, let's say if I had an income of um, let's say 1.5 lakhs monthly and at a growth rate of 5% annually, and let's say I have no other EMIs and I want a 80 lakh ka loan for 25 years at an interest rate of 9%. So now system says based on my current income, my income in the goal year, since goal is 5 years down the line, based on 5% growth rate, my goal income, I mean income in goal year would be 1.9 lakhs. Based on 1.9 lakhs, what is the highest loan available to me is 1.14 CR. And if I take a loan of 1.14 CR, the EMI that will be charged to me is 95,000. But I just want the 80 lakh का loan, so उसके लिए मुझे 65,000 की EMI आएगी. And it's also showing me कितना percent is my loan amount and कितना is my down payment. So I can simply add this part to the goal, and जो requirement 1,30,000 का आ रहा था वो 25,000 पे आ गया. So client को भी लग रहा है कि आज से the goal is slight, I mean achievable in that sense कि मैं भी 20 लाख के लिए मेरे को 25,000 का EMI, I mean SIP करना है, उससे मेरा 20 लाख अचीव हो जाएगा and बाकी का I'll take a loan. So these kind of things when shown to the client helps them take a much more informed decision and helps you also start an SIP right away. So now coming to the key info part. So abhi I'll just show other goals also. So abhi house goal, car goal, marriage, even emergency, wealth creation, big spend and others are effectively the same type of goals, if I may say. Only let's say the type of asset or the type of thing is changing. Whereas vacation and education are completely different in that sense. Where vacation you are saying from when to when do you want to plan this goal, and how frequently do you want to try. Let's say every second year I want to go for a vacation. So let's say travel. So now here you can also see the year-wise breakup. Every year, let's say I want to go for a 1 lakh vacation. It's also showing me how much in that year based on the inflation rates I have taken. What is the right uh, what is the right kind of what is the future value that I'll have to plan for? Like today's expense is 1 lakh, but in 2034 the expense will grow to 2 lakhs for that particular year, and similarly it will continue to increase for the consequent years. So, and third is the retirement part. So, in the retirement also, we ask what is your current expense. If you retire, let's say, how likely, what percentage will it reduce or increase by? Because certain expenses will be cut off from your end as well. So, otherwise, let's say, assume it to be zero. Are there any milestone, let's say milestone either at retirement or let's say when the person dies, do you want to plan certain things? For example, do you want to start a new business on retirement, or do you want to plan for philanthropy and so on? So those, let's say if I want to plan for a new business, say I need an investment of 1 CR, the requirement will suddenly grow accordingly. Otherwise, if I don't add, I can simply create a goal. So based on the monthly requirement of 10,000, it will tell me that my present value is 120, and based on 120 in goal year, I need 320, 340, and so on. It will be inflated. And for that, in on the day of retirement, which is in 2041, I'll need a corpus of 54 lakhs, effectively speaking. Okay. So even though I need 10 lakhs here, 9 lakhs here, 9 lakhs here, if I have 54 lakhs here, all these years will be then taken care of because the 54 lakhs will continue to grow based on how I'm allocating it. Again, in a goal like retirement, you have two kinds of asset allocation where you can say pre-retirement it will grow at 60/40, whereas post retirement I'll switch the asset allocation and more amount will be in the safer side. So those kind of interpretations you can always do, and the system will again accordingly increase or decrease the amount based on how you change the numbers. Okay. In all three goals, you see a detailed table, year-wise table on how much the value would be and how much of it is already achievable when you allocate certain assets. We'll see that as well, but you will see that chart. There's also a key info part where you can see a general overview. Let's say if I especially show it in vacation kind of goal, you will be able to see how much you have to achieve in each of the years. So for example, now I've allocated a real estate, right, for 10. So you can see that debt portion for these particular years has already been taken care of. I just have to take care of these following years. Whereas the equity part, it's still yet to be taken care of by this real estate. So those kind of things you can always see it in the key info, and here also it's visible that 48% and so on has already been taken care, but the remaining is still yet to be allocated. So yeah, coming to the allocations bit, let me just come back here. Yeah. So allocation to allocate any assets. So we have two allocations tab. So the first is for any other asset except mutual fund. And for mutual fund, we have a separate tab. Sorry. So for allocating any other assets, it's a simple drag and drop process where you just look at the asset and you just drag it and drop it here. The system will automatically calculate and allocate only that much portion which is required. So for this case, since this as real estate was of 1 CR value approximately, and I only the new house that I want 5 years later is also approximately worth 1 CR. So what the system did was, based on the growth rate that I mentioned of a real estate here, which is at 9%, the system will automatically allocate a lesser portion, that only 65% से काम हो जाएगा, because this will continue to grow and will become 99.4 in 2029. So we are also showing what is the value going to be in 2029 based on if you allocate it today. Okay. So that's why system is not allowing you to allocate extra. You can always look to allocate it slightly lesser. Let's say अगर मैं 64 या 63 कर देता हूँ या 60 कर देता हूँ, तो सिस्टम विल नाउ शो सर्टेन रिक्वायरमेंट्स कि थोड़ा पैसा और एलोकेट करना पड़ेगा. बट अगर इफ आई एलोकेट मोर, वो सिस्टम विल ट्रिम इट डाउन टू द राइट नंबर. ठीक है. So that is the main aspect. Now this is true for any asset. Two important things to note here. So any asset that is debt oriented, एक बार वो अपना debt का it will prioritize, but once the debt portion is taken care of, the debt portion will continue to fulfill the equity portion. So अगर मैं इसमें example दूँ, I'll just make it break up. So फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं वो रियल एस्टेट करके मैं दिखाता ही हूँ आप लोगों को, शायद और क्लैरिटी मिलेगा. सो लेट्स से अगर मैं खाली 10% एलोकेट करता हूँ, सो अभी दोनों में रिक्वायरमेंट है. नाउ सिंस रियल एस्टेट इज प्राइमरली डेट ज्यादा समझ लीजिए. So what it will try to do is it will try to first fulfill the debt portion. So when we increase the percentage step by step, you will see कि वो डेट वाला पार्ट पहले जीरो होते जाएगा. ये अभी देखिए दिस 1357 इज स्टेबल बट दिस हैज कम डाउन ड्रास्टिकली. सिमिलरली अगर मैं और इसको बढ़ाऊं थोड़ा, सो इट विल अगेन डेट पार्ट पूरा वो जीरो करने का ट्राई करेगा. वंस डेट हो गया और उसका पैसा बच गया, नाउ इट हैज स्टार्टेड टू प्ले इन द इक्विटी साइड एंड उसके बाद वो इक्विटी करेगा. हाउएवर व्हेन इट कम्स टू अ एसेट लाइक लेट्स से स्टॉक्स फॉर एग्जांपल, वो स्टॉक्स वगैरह पे दिस कंसेप्ट डजंट अप्लाई बिकॉज देन यू आर चेंजिंग द रिस्क एपेटाइट ऑफ द क्लाइंट. कि आप अगर लेट्स से अगर मैं इसको हटा के मैं एक्सप्लेन करूँ खाली उसको, जस्ट अ सेकंड. So let's say अभी इसका asset allocation, if I had to explain, 20-80 है, that this guy wants to allocate 80% in debt and just 20% in equity. If I allocate 13 lakhs in stocks और उसके बाद भी stocks का पैसा है, if I try to allocate, the system won't allow you to allocate because क्या हो रहा है, then you are trying to allocate more equities than the client risk profile that it allows. तो उसके लिए आपको फिर asset allocation पहले change करना पड़ेगा. So that is one place where I think many of you sometimes end up having certain queries on this part. Um, So yeah, coming to the MF allocations front, the same concept applies. Now in the MF allocation side, you have the option to either allocate the lump sum portion or the SIP portion. Now the difference here is in the lump sum portion, this is a simple certain units that you are allocating. When you allocate this portion of it, it doesn't imply that any future units that are going to come in this fund will be automatically allocated. That you'll have to do manually. That's why sometimes when you would see many of you who are actively using the goal section would have a query that many a times when you visit the same section after let's say 6 months, you see that the percentages may have changed slightly. And this is because let's say if this 120 units then becomes 200 units, the percentage has to come down to let's say 60% because the rest of the 40% is not really invested in this particular goal. And that is also done, just to give you context, that is done so that many a time what happens is although the current investment is for this particular goal, any new purchases that are happening in this particular fund, let's say if you invest more 10 lakhs, that can essentially be for a separate goal as well. So we don't automatically allocate it right in the same goal, and we ask you to manually update it in this such a scenario. However, if it's an SIP, you have an option to allocate the SIP, and all any future contributions that are happening in the mode of an SIP will automatically be considered and assume that it is part of this goal only. Again, you can choose to allocate partially here and partially in a separate goal. That way, any new SIP that will come in the right proportions, some amount will be allocated in this fund, whereas some other amount will be allocated in a separate fund. Okay, so that was it on this side. So again, we also have a summary report when you click on this icon. So when you click, it will just create a summarized version for you to see all the goals and all the requirements on how much you need. So you can just see and see how much the progress has been on each side. And you can also generate a report of this particular page and send it to your clients for understanding. So yeah. Um, Anything. Yeah. So once you've created all the reports, what you can do is in the overview section in the reports tab, you have the option to create a consolidated reports of all the PDFs, all the reports together, all the PDFs, you can combine them in one place and you can send them a consolidated PDF to all your clients, whereas, they can see that this is the requirement. I mean, first page is let's say the whole goal, the second page is the retirement goal and so on and so forth. So that you'll be able to basically see and send it to your clients. So just give me a second. Yeah. So let's say here in the plan tab, or even you can also attach the portfolio related reports. So one, let's say long 100-page PDF on which contains, which might start with, let's say assets, MF reports, and then it may consider the goal reports, maybe goal summary first, and then the step by step goal wise, let's say house, car, so on and so forth. Once you have enough goals, you can also rearrange. Maybe you just drag and drop like this and you just generate the plan, and you can download this and send it to your clients. So yeah, so I think mostly I've covered everything. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Yeah.